Ecuador's government, presided by Guillermo Lasso, abandoned the dialogue table and ignores the leadership of the country's indigenous movement. The Truth Commission presented its final report explaining the patterns and persistence of the armed conflict in Colombia. The Russian government informed about the possibility of ending its special military operation in Ukraine if Kiev orders the nationalist groups to lay down their arms. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The national government, presided by Guillermo Lasso, abandoned the dialogue table and ignores the leadership of the country's indigenous movement. The decision of the Ecuadorian President was announced after the death of Armed Forces Sergeant Jose Chimarro, who lost his life after an attack on a convoy guarding fuel tankers on a route leading to the oil block in the Amazon. Lasso blamed the fact on the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalists of Ecuador leading the mobilizations. The president indicated that under these actions there are no guarantees necessary to continue with the dialogue process. Leonidas Issa, president of the Indigenous Confederation of Ecuador, pointed out after a long day of dialogue between authorities of indigenous peoples and representatives of the executive that most of the issues raised at the talks were not solved. Among the government's failures to comply with their requests, Issa highlighted the request for the protection of indigenous lands from mining and oil companies and respect of the guarantees to the right to protest.
As a result of the struggle, there are many who have been criminalized, many who at this moment are already undergoing trial. Therefore, no one has gone out to fight for vandalism, at least from us. If this process should be clean without any comrade in this case that is currently penalized for the social protests, I do ask you, Mr. President of the Republic, Minister, that we stop this situation, stop the racism, stop the hatred. And I believe that Mr. Carrillo is not a guarantee for our democracy.
In that sense, Issa pointed out that in view of President Lasso's call to violence and the lack of commitment to the demands, the Assembly would discuss the next decisions to be made.
Yesterday, the President was clear with all the violence attached to his words. But we would have liked him to be here. But he has not really had the courage to say what he said yesterday at the press conference. Therefore, we hope that with all these issues that have not been solved, we really have to consult. All the leaders are here, and we will. And we really would have liked that at this table, on the agreements, on the public issues, we would have liked to tell the country, to tell the world, comrades, we've made progress, and we need to be able to put down our actions. But in this case, with the substantial points, we cannot, and there we have to make a decision with our country.
In Colombia, the Truth Commission presented its final report explaining the patterns and persistence of the armed conflict in the country. The document presented by the president of the Truth Commission, Jesuit priest Francisco de Rue, called for action and for not postponing peace. Father Rue said that the final report summarizes thousands of testimonies collected during 3.5 years of work, which translates into a petition to stop the tragedy of a conflict in which 80% of the victims have been unarmed civilians. President and Vice President-elect Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez attended the report presentation, whereas outgoing President Iván Duque did not. On Tuesday, the Honduran people marked the 13th anniversary of the coup against former President Manuel Zelaya. The Party Liberty and Red Foundation honored the dates with a series of activities, such as debates and analysis of the 2009 coup. Likewise, a forum was held at the Presidential Palace with the presence of social leaders, authorities, and former heads of state from Latin America. On June 28, 2009, Manuel Zelaya was ousted by a parliamentary coup promoted by the conservative sectors of the country after the former president's attempt to modify the constitution to benefit the people. With a tribute to the liberator Simón Bolívar, authorities of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the People's Republic of China celebrate the 48th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two nations. After the floral offering placed before the sarcophagus of the Father of the Homeland, located in the National Pantheon, the signing of the act where the ceremonial record of the anniversary of the alliance between the two countries was carried out. The document was signed by Chinese Ambassador in Venezuela, Li Baorong, and the Venezuelan Executive Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, who led the celebration ceremony. During her speech, Rodriguez recalled that China was the first country that came with its hands of solidarity to support and teach the Venezuelan people to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, highlighting the cooperation between both nations, which she said has been very successful. In the U.S., authorities in Texas found at least 50 people dead inside a tractor-trailer truck in what appears to be the deadliest human smuggling case in modern U.S. history. San Antonio authorities told reporters that 48 people were found dead inside the truck while another 2 died at the hospital. About 16 other people are being treated for heat-related injuries, including 4 children. The truck was found next to railroad tracks in a remote area on the southern outskirts of San Antonio. High temperatures in the city topped 39 degrees Celsius with high humidity. According to San Antonio Police Chief William McManus, 3 people were taken into custody following the discovery. We are taking a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. The summit of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization begins in Spain. On the occasion of this meeting, the Spanish government increases the security deployment amidst the rejection of the social movements. Since Friday, police presence in the streets and other measures were intensified to maintain control within the framework of the security operation called Air In. Nearly 10,000 agents were deployed, 6,550 national police officers and 2,400 civil guards, who will be joined by members of the Municipal Police of Madrid. Firefighters, emergency and civil protection, the security of the Royal House, the presidency of the government and private security, the heads of state participated in the meeting were received on Tuesday evening with a gala dinner at the Prado Museum in Madrid, in which the King of Spain will also participate. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said on Tuesday her government intends to hold a second independence referendum on October 19, 2023, while conceding it may not have the power to do so without London's approval.
States that the question on the ballot paper should be, just as it was in 2014, should Scotland be an independent country? Finally, Presiding Officer, the bill includes the proposed date on which the referendum should be held. In line with the Government's clear mandate, this is a date within the first half of this term of Parliament. Presiding Officer, I can announce that the Scottish Government is proposing that the independence referendum be held on the 19th of October 2023.
The Russian government informed about the possibility of ending its military operation in Ukraine if Kiev orders the nationalist formations to lay down their arms. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov assured that Ukraine can bring the conflict to an end. It only needs to order the surrender of nationalist forces and comply with Moscow's security demands. Meanwhile, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated that his government seeks to end the fighting before the arrival of winter. In this respect, Peskov pointed out that Russian officials are guided only by the statements of the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and in this sense the operation is being carried out according to plan and all the objectives are being achieved. Russian President Vladimir Putin began on Tuesday a 2-day visit to Tajikistan, his second foreign trip this year. The Russian head of state met his Tajik counterpart, Emomali Rakhmon. The agenda included bilateral and multilateral talks to discuss cooperation in trade, defense, culture, migration, and other issues. The two leaders also focused on the situation in Afghanistan, with talks covering joint measures to ensure Tajikistan's border security and military construction projects. According to information released by a presidential aide, both leaders covered the guidelines for a strategic partnership with due account taken for the 30th anniversary of diplomatic bilateral relations this year. China on Tuesday announced adjustments to its COVID-19 prevention and control protocol that will make shorten the quarantine time for inbound travelers and close contacts of the infected. The new 9th version of the COVID-19 protocol sticks to the general strategies of guarding against imported cases and preventing COVID-19 resurgences at home and dynamic zero-COVID approach, but includes some changes compared with the previous 8th version. The isolation period for inbound travelers and the close contacts of COVID-19 cases will be shortened. The new protocol designates risk areas as high, medium, and low-risk ones based on the epidemic situation in a specific area and implements corresponding restrictive measures. Lastly, the frequency of nucleic acid tests for high-risk occupational groups will be increased.
The isolation time for close contacts of COVID-19 cases and inbound travelers will be adjusted from the regime of 14 days and concentrated quarantine plus 7 days in home isolation to 7 days in concentrated quarantine plus 3 days in home isolation. The quarantine regime for the secondary close contacts will be changed from 7 days in concentrated quarantine to 7 days in home isolation.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Tuesday, the Israeli parliament unanimously approved a draft bill to dissolve legislative body, a key step that pushes the country closer towards its 5th elections in less than 4 years. Members of Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's outgoing coalition and the opposition led by former Premier Benjamin Netanyahu have been arguing in Israel's parliament, the Knesset, since last week over a dissolution bill. Netanyahu and his allies have been holding talks seeking to form a new government within the current parliament, which would avert new elections. The sides have traded legislative consultations but finally agreed to advance a bill that would be finalized as law by the end of Wednesday. According to the bill, Parliament will dissolve, with new elections to be held on October 25th or November 1st. A crane loading chlorine tanks onto a ship in Jordan's port of Aqaba dropped one of them, causing a huge explosion of toxic yellow smoke that killed 13 people and injured more than 250. According to the latest toll update, around 123 people remain in the hospital on Tuesday. Some were in critical conditions. Chlorine is a widely used disinfectant and water purification agent, but if inhaled, the gas turns to hydrochloric acid, which can lead to internal burning and drowning through a reactionary release of water in the lungs. Following the incident, authorities advised residents of Aqaba City to stay inside and close windows and doors as a precaution. Moreover, the Civil Defense Department sent specialist teams to the port to deal with the leak and cleanup operation. Negotiations between Iran and world powers on drafting 2015 nuclear deal resumed this Tuesday in the Qatari capital of Doha, with mediation by the European Union after the talks broke down in March. Tehran's chief negotiator Ali Bagheri Kani attended the negotiations on behalf of the Iranian government. On the other hand, Robert Malley was the United States Special Envoy present in the talks. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was designed to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons and impose strict limits on its nuclear activity in return for an easing of U.S. and international economic sanctions. but former President Donald Trump pulled the U.S. out of the deal in 2018, reimposing sanctions and introduced hundreds of additional sanctions on the Middle East country.
I confirm that we reached an agreement, but it remains to be seen whether the U.S. government can, according to the plan, stop following the Trump administration's policies in a practical and concrete way and become the responsible party. Iran has committed to participate in the talks and to try and resolve the remaining issues from the previous negotiations in the shortest possible time.
China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson urged the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to stop its Cold War mentality and provocative remarks against the Asian giant.
It's an opportunity for the world. It's not a challenge to anyone. We solemnly urge NATO to immediately stop spreading groundless and provocative remarks against China. What NATO should do is to abandon its Cold War mentality, zero-sum game and practices of creating enemies. After messing up Europe, NATO should not try to mess up Asia and the whole world as well.
A UN committee called on Morocco and Spain to investigate the recent death of more than 20 migrants at the border between the two countries. The UN Committee on Migrant Workers asked the governments of Rabat and Madrid to investigate immediately and completely the causes of the death of 23 sub-Saharan migrants who took part in a massive attempt to cross from Morocco to the Spanish city of Melilla. The international body reported that it remains to be established whether the victims died when they fell from the border fence in the stampede or as a result of any action by border agents. During the closing press conference of the Group of 7 summit, leaders agreed to create a climate club by the end of the year that will allow willing nations to coordinate and speed up efforts to tackle global warming.
We will not lose sight of the long-term duties. We want to make progress towards a just world and assume global responsibility. This applies, for example, to climate protection. That is why we have discussed the issue of a climate club here, which I have been proposing for a long time, and I am therefore pleased that we have agreed here in Elmau to establish such a club by the end of the year. We have laid the foundations for this project, we have defined the challenges and agreed on the next steps to be taken.
teleSUR expands its signal with new satellite parameters since more than ever. The world connects to us and our stories are heard in other faraway nations. These parameters are in place since June 1st in Latin America and the Caribbean, both in English and in Spanish, and quite soon further changes will be implemented for the signals in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. This news multi-platform will continue providing truthful content to oppose the hegemonic media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. We've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.